The penny. It's the debate resurfacing yet again in D.C. President Trump posting on Truth Social saying he's directing the Treasury to stop minting new pennies because they cost more than a cent to make. So is the move penny wise or pound foolish? People have been trying to get rid of the copper coins, now mostly made of zinc by the way, for decades. That's because it costs a pretty penny to make a penny. Trump isn't the first president to consider axing the coin. President Obama floated scrapping the penny 12 years ago.
Anytime we're spending more money on something that people don't actually use, that's an example of something we should probably change.
But the administration wasn't able to execute on the cuts.
You just get all these objections. What happens to Lincoln's face that is on this? What about the states we're buying the copper from? How do they update the cash registers? And I confess, and I'm not proud of it, that eventually I just got worn down.
Nowadays, the U.S. Mint says making each penny costs more than 3.5 cents, and that when you add them all up, it equals a more than $85 million loss for the federal government in 2024. Other countries have already rid themselves of their pennies. Canada discontinued theirs more than a decade ago. Australia and New Zealand nixed theirs back in the 90s. Some are passionate about their pennies. The pro-penny group Americans for Common Sense, yes, with a C, is run by Mark Weller, a lobbyist for the zinc industry. Its website cites reasons for seeing the other side of the coin, pointing out the penny's usefulness in charity donations and concerns that losing the 1 cent coin would cause merchants to round up to the nearest nickel, raising prices on consumers who pay with cash.
The trend in other countries suggested to us that it would be a good idea to get rid of the penny, that it just was not at all necessary. Lots of countries do without them and do just fine.
If the Trump administration is able to stop the minting of new pennies, it wouldn't be without precedent in the U.S. Back in 1857, Congress discontinued the half-cent coin. Some of those coins can now fetch up to hundreds or even thousands of dollars from collectors, meaning that even in a post-penny world, a penny saved could end up being more than a penny earned.
Brian Chung is joining us now. Okay. First of all, fascinating. Second of all, practically, let's say the penny goes away. Let's say I go to the store, the corner store, and something costs $3.47. And if there's no pennies, right, at the store doesn't, like, do they round up to a nickel? Is that what other countries have done? Is that kind of the practical impact of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, you would still end up with change, to be clear. You just wouldn't have a few extra cents because you wouldn't have a 1 cent. The lowest denomination would then be 5 cents. Right. But in Canada, it is the case that, yes, we've seen, some companies maybe just round up to the next nearest nickel. Although I want to point out, Hallie, interestingly, the nickel also costs a lot to make. 1 nickel costs 13.8 cents to make. So maybe that's the next target.
It's the nickel next.
There you go.
Right,
the nickel next.
All right. Well, so we'll see that on the breakdown, I'm sure, in a few weeks from.
Welcome to Two Lamps Last Hour News.
I'm Vernon.
I'm Cheryl. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Sorry we hadn't posted in a little while. We had some things we had to tend to, but we're back now. So let's get into this. Looks like we're looking at the beginning of a cashless society.
When I was younger, I remember rich people sometimes dropping change, any different store or whatever. And I heard one man say, if it's not a quarter, I'm not going to pick it up. Well, that's not the way poor people look at it. A penny saved is a penny earned. So now, take away the pennies. So that's the start of it.
So let's look at this second clip. Pay attention to when he says those quiet measures.
Today's show, Donald Trump is following through with actually removing the United States penny. And this is a big deal for a lot of reasons. Donald Trump is supposed to be anti-globalism, anti-New World Order. And one of the things that is so critical in the New World Order's infrastructure is a cashless society. And the only way you end up with a cashless society is by removing physical currency. It starts with coins and it moves to cash. So this is a quiet measure being taken that they're trying to spin as a cost-cutting move.
In the Bible, it talks about a denarius being a day's wages. And that's funny, but they call the denarius equivalency of a penny. And now, with the new world order agenda to be installed by 100 days, it's supposed to be around May 1st. And that's also the time that we heard last year that they're supposed to impose face recognition to go in places. Well, with the New World Order, you can't have cash. And because the penny, the dime, the nickel, the quarter, the 50 cents, the dollars are in the way of the New World Order, it's going to be a cost-effective thing to get rid of all of it. So it's going to be a different-looking government and a place to live without change. It's almost like, why do you need pockets? But anyway, since they want to get rid of that, then it also is the only thing between us and them as far as our freedom, sovereignty as a nation. You take away the money, you take away the sovereignty of a nation. Now, when they take that away, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of your rights, that's on the table, because that's all about your freedoms, freedom to choose what you want. So, Lord willing, that's not what it's going to be yet. We got to be ready, though, in case things go down. We don't know what it's going to look like in 100 days.
And conservatives are on board with this idea because they say it makes no sense business-wise. It costs 2 pennies to make a penny. And then, of course, it shifts from removing pennies, rounding up or down to the nearest nickel. And then what's the next problem? Well, the next problem is that it's too costly to make nickels, right? Getting rid of the penny introduces a new problem. Nickels. So pennies are made up of 97.5% zinc, but they continue to pretend like they're 100% copper, and they continue to talk about it like it's fully made of copper. They're telling you that because they don't want you to realize that it is not that expensive to make a penny, but that's the excuse they will use to get conservatives on board with thinking that this is about business and not about New World Order infrastructure. Then you look at the nickel, right? Well, the nickel is supposedly made up of 75% copper and 25% nickel, and every news clip that they have aired across the United States of America in regards to removing the penny has said the same exact thing. They said, wait a minute, but it's really expensive for the nickel as well. So this is how it happens, like dominoes falling. You get rid of the penny, you round to the nickel. Now it's too expensive to produce the nickel, so you get rid of the nickel and you move to what? The dime. But guess what? Dimes are made up of 75% copper and 25% nickel. And then after some time, you tell everybody we can't have dimes anymore. In fact, we can't have quarters anymore. Then you work on the cash. And the propaganda will come out about how most people don't use cash anyway. That's one of the things they try to push, is that most transactions are done via credit card and eventually via just holding up your wrist or being scanned in full by your biometrics in order to make payments, because that's what we're headed towards in a new world order. But they'll make excuses up about the cash. Remember, during the outbreak, they were trying to take cash and coins out of circulation. They started having...
Here's Elon Musk talking about America Incorporated. Now let's go. Watch this.
Website is a picture of Reagan and Gorbachev. That's been a while. That was like the 80s. So I'm obviously not opposed to democracy, or there's all these things that get funded, but we're like, why does this need taxpayer money? It doesn't seem like it does. There's a lot of sort of pushing DEI worldwide. This obviously the Trump administration doesn't agree with, and we want to terminate that stuff, which we are. And, and make sure the schools focus on improving basic education of kids. As President Trump said, I think yesterday, maybe today, the United States is currently ranked 40th out of 40 in the OECD for education, which is pretty bad. But in terms of spending, the United States is spending a tremendous amount per student, but achieving very weak results. So, that's just a case where, okay, we need to spend less money and get better results. It's like a big company, like a big corporation, American Incorporated. And just like with Twitter, there was a lot of stuff that was being done that was unnecessary. In the case of Twitter, we reduced the staff by 80%, but at the same time improved the functionality and capabilities of the site dramatically and accomplished more in a year than they previously accomplished in 5 years. So,
folks, listen real good to what he says. America Incorporated, not we the people, not about a God we trust, but America Incorporated. And later it's about 80% reduction in workforce. Listen well.
Like a big corporation, America Incorporated. And just like with Twitter, there was a lot of...
Notice he says scary smart.
And something else he mentions is that he's going to give these people lose their jobs and give them money until September because the jobs they have with the government was low productivity and negative productivity. Well, I can tell you now, he's gauging that off of they're getting money from that. So what they're doing is helping the people. When you call up there, you talk to a person. And once they take away that person, you're going to have to talk to an automated system. And we all know that automated systems do not help you to the point that you need help. They cannot give you the help you need because they don't explain it and they don't know it. And I don't think AI can handle it. They can build these big buildings, but I don't think they can handle it.
Just like with Twitter, there was a lot of stuff that was being done that was unnecessary. In the case of Twitter, we reduced the staff by 80%, but at the same time improved the functionality and capabilities of the site dramatically and accomplished more in a year than they previously accomplished in 5 years. So it was like a corporate turnaround, but at a much larger scale. And we're giving generous exit packages. If people retire, they get paid all the way through September. They can go on vacation, get a second job, do whatever they want. We can't actually pay them any more than through September because the congressional appropriation is only through the end of the government financial year, which ends in September. So I think there'll be some disruption, but at the end of the day, we'll have people move from, like I said, from low to negative productivity roles in the government sector to higher productivity roles in the private sector.
Can we pivot to artificial intelligence? And I'm sure you've been seeing what DeepSeek has done and all the claimed achievements that they've had. I know that we've been speaking for a while about Grok 3 and that Grok 3 is going to be a true disruptor in the AI space. When are we going to see that? And what capabilities can we expect from Grok
3? Well, Grok 3 has very, very powerful reasoning capabilities. In the tests that we've done thus far, Grok 3 is outperforming anything that's been released that we're aware of. In fact, at times I think Grok 3 is kind of scary smart. You're like, wow, this thing's smart. It's kind of scary. Grok 3 is scary. It's like, wow, this thing's, it comes up with solutions that you didn't even think were, in fact, at times I think Grok 3 is kind of scary smart. You're like, wow, this thing's smart. It's kind of scary. Grok 3 is scary. It's like, wow, this thing's, in fact, at times I think Grok 3 is kind of scary smart. You're like, wow, this thing's smart. It's kind of scary. Grok 3 is scary. It's like, wow, this thing's, it comes up with solutions that you didn't even think were, you wouldn't even anticipate, not obvious solutions. So Grok 3 was trained with the most amount of compute, and I think very efficiently trained. Grok 3 was trained on a lot of synthetic data, and then it goes back and forth through the data and tries to achieve logical consistency. If it's got data that is wrong, it'll actually reflect upon that and remove the data that is wrong. It does not concord with reality. So its base reasoning is very good. In fact, even without fine tuning, Grok 3, the base model. So we're really in the final stages of polishing Grok 3. Probably it gets released in about a week or two. I don't want to be hasty in the release because a lot of the final polish is necessary for a great user experience. In some ways, you can think of it like a house. You know, that last 5% where you finish the drywall and do the painting and the trimming, even though it's not much work, it transforms the house. So it's that, just want to make sure that that last 5% is done really well. It's a week, maybe 2 weeks. And I think it'll be very good. And I think we think it'll be better than anything else. And then maybe this might be the last time that any AI is better than Grok.
Looking forward to it.
Just provide any service. There's really no limit to the economy at that point. You can make anything. At that point, will money even be meaningful? I don't know. It might not be. The economic output is productivity per capita times how many people do you have. If in the form of humanoid robots, you have no meaningful limit on the number of robots, and the robots can basically do anything, then you'll have a sort of a universal high income situation. Anyone will be able to have as many products and services as they want, with the exception of things that say have artificial scarcity, like a particular piece of art or something like that. But for any goods and services, they'll be available to everyone.
So you've been...
It's going to be a very different world, you know. In fact, I recommend that people read maybe the Ian Bank, since they'll be available to everyone.
So you've been...
It's going to be a very different world, you know. In fact, I recommend that people read maybe the Ian Banks, the culture books, for a frame of reference. Because money is like a database or an information system for resource allocation. But if you don't have a scarcity of resources, it's not clear what purpose money has.
Have you watched the movie Idiocracy?
Yes.
How do you guarantee that we don't end up in that world if we don't need money, if AI can think for us and do all these tasks, if as people, you know, we're dependent on something else to run the society and everything around it? How do we not end up in that world? In the long term, I mean.
Well, I think Idiocracy was basically saying that if smart people don't reproduce, but only dumb people do, then everyone's going to be dumb. That's the opening sequence of Idiocracy. The first 10 minutes are amazing. And I hear people unironically say the statements that are said in the opening sequence of Idiocracy, where, you know, they're too busy with their careers to have kids, and they keep postponing having kids for their careers until they're too old to have kids, and then they don't have kids. And I've heard many people be like that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we might be headed to a bimodal human intelligence distribution, where there's a small number. It's kind of maybe like more like Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, where you've got sort of a small group of very smart humans, but then maybe the average intelligence drifts lower over time.
So I just want to touch upon a topic that was quoted in the media. You offered, I think they said the group that was led by you offered $97 billion for acquiring OpenAI. I personally take a little run on this. So I was personally involved in the meeting that you and Sam hosted in 2017. And if you remember, and you know, at that point in time, you were the single largest shareholder. I think you contributed $50 million to the company. So it must hurt.
I don't have any shares, actually. I have no shares in OpenAI.
But at that time, it was a non-profit, right? And it must hurt that you need to pay $97 billion for something that you paid $50 million for in the past.
Yeah.
But I have a specific question here. Can you actually build a company like OpenAI and take it to the scale that you want to take as a non-profit? Is it possible that you build a company that requires billions of dollars in compute capabilities to build these models while being a non-profit? Or was it wishful thinking in the beginning and then, you know, you guys parted ways because it couldn't work?
What they're trying to do now is completely delete the non-profit. That seems to really go too far. You know, I provided all of the funding for OpenAI in the beginning. So first, almost $50 million for nothing, or as a non-profit. And it was meant to be open source. You know, I think this is analogous to, like, if you fund a non-profit to preserve the Amazon rainforest, but instead they turn it into a lumber company and chop down the trees and sell them for wood. You're like, wait a second, that's the exact opposite of what I donated the money for. So OpenAI is meant to be open source, nonprofit, and now it is closed. They changed the name to closed for maximum profit AI. Closed for voracious profit. I mean, they are like, whoa, are they after money next level? So why does this change need to occur?
I know that you've been at the forefront of many technologies. Where do you think the biggest economic returns of these models are going to come from? Because currently we're spending billions, and I think you mentioned this before, it's like the gambler syndrome. We're going and spending billions and hoping to pull out a profit at the end of the day. Where do you think the biggest impact in terms of returns are going to be?
Well, I think once you have humanoid robots and deep intelligence, you can basically have quasi-infinite products and services available. So with Tesla building the most advanced humanoid robot, then those humanoid robots can be directed by deep intelligence at the data center level. Say you can produce any product, provide any service. There's really no limit to the economy at that point. You can make anything. At that point, will money even be meaningful? I don't know. It might not be.
There it is. He said, will money even be meaningful? Sounds like a cashless society to me.
He said humanoids will be used for labor. All kinds of things that they can make or use them for. That means that will replace jobs. Is that where more and more of unemployment will occur? We'll have to see.
To the economy at that point. You can make anything. At that point, will money even be meaningful? I don't know. It might not be. The economic output, provide any service, there's really no limit to the economy at that point. You can make anything. At that point, will money even be meaningful? I don't know. It might not be. The economic output is productivity per capita times how many people do you have. If in the form of humanoid robots, you have no meaningful limit on the number of robots, and the robots can basically do anything, then you'll have a sort of a universal high income situation. Anyone will be able to have as many products and services as they want, with the exception of things that say have artificial scarcity, like a particular piece of art or something like that. But for any goods and services, they'll be available to everyone. So you've been, it's going to be a very different world, you know. In fact, I recommend that people read maybe the Ian Bank.
He says it's going to be a very different world. I wonder if we're ready for that different world.
Lord willing, there's not a price on our heads. Like we don't cost too much for this government that we won't recognize the government.
Until next time, 2 Lamps Last Hour News.